We're live.
Awesome.
Are we? We are live. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Elephant and Castle Facebook page. I'm Nick from Retribe with a few technical problems as always, but they're all sorted out. And joining me today is Dimitris Pallis, who just will go by Dimitris or Dimitri, who's a ethical hacker and general all around tech savvy gentleman who's I'm really super interested to be able to talk to you about today because I'm okay tech savvy. I'm almost 52 years old. I know how to play with my iPhone. I have a brand new iWatch, and I'm getting into stuff. But it's a language that I've known has changed an awful lot over the years. And again, I'm really grateful that you can come and join us for the next 45, Dimitri. So first of all, yes, thank you for joining us. How are you doing?
Great. Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for the invite, Nick. And it's great to be here. You know, I've seen a lot of your videos, and it's very inspiring to hear other people and their stories on how they started. So, you know, I'm very excited for this interview. And yeah. Hi, everyone.
Well, yeah, thanks. You are a local Elephant Castle guy too, aren't you?
Definitely, yeah. I live in Elephant Castle. You know, I love the vibe. I love the community. I love that there's everything nearby. You can literally have, you know, any food you'd like. We've got so many great restaurants, you know, from all places of the world, and you know, so many activities. I used actually, just like you wrote on the description, I used to play tennis at Burgess Park. So we literally got, I don't think that counts as Elephant and Castle, the Burgess Park. I think it's more towards Kennington, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, it feels great to, you know, be here and actively engage with the community, with live videos and everything.
I'm interested because interested to know that, like, a guy who works in the tech world, I imagine it can be quite a lonely place, you know, just you and your flat and all of the equipment that you need to do the work that you need. So I suppose what we can do is, like, how important is it for you, before we get into the work that you do, but because we're talking about community, how important is it for you to have a foot into live community, especially the Elephant Castle? Because like you said, it is so diverse. There's amazing restaurants, amazing things to do. But for your own overall health, Dimitri, like, how often do you get out? How important is it to have interactions with people face to face?
That's a great question. And to be honest, after 2019, like late 2019, I started working from home actually around late 2019 and early 2020. And that was before COVID happened. So it was around 2 months. I think COVID started on February 2020. So I started working from home since December 2019. So, well, when you work in the tech industry, you know, everybody's let's say dream, everybody's goal is to work remotely and travel the world and see all the places, you know. But the thing is, like, at the end of the day, that was one of my goals as well, to work remotely, you know, be on my own terms, have a lot of time on my hands. And the thing is, when I managed to do that, it turns out that you have to take care of your mental health, and you have to engage with community and meet people face to face. I know with COVID it was a bit difficult, but this is like your number one priority, not only the tech industry, but for anyone who's working remotely, to take care of your mental health and go outside, you know, do activities, have a discussion with someone. Even the very simple things, you know, they can help you a lot at the end of the day. And yeah, I believe that's the most important aspect of work from home. And yeah, how I'm trying actually to do it is meeting friends, you know, in the middle of the week. I know that in London, sometimes people have to schedule their meetings like 1 week up front, 2 weeks up front, maybe. It's a bit, you know, it's not so, let's say, okay, I'm going to call somebody and go outside right now. But yeah, doing a local activity, even at the gym, you know, like playing sports, or, you know, meeting someone for a quick coffee, maybe at the pub, you know, for a beer or something. Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, it is important. I'm glad that you talk about it, because I think that since COVID, and I think people have gotten used to kind of hybrid or working at home models, and there's been a lot of issues around people's mental well-being for those who basically made their bedrooms into their offices. And that was a huge thing during the lockdowns, is that people were living and working and sleeping in one room, and it got to be I think probably today we still don't know the ramifications of all the challenges it could have provided or it did provide for people. And I'm glad that you're out there, enjoying the community and getting involved in it, because it is a balance. And I know that the Instagram world is full of people who work remotely. And currently I am one of those. I managed to be able to come to Portugal every 6 to 8 months. And for me, that's my healthy thing too, is like, I know it kind of, oh, what a luxury to be able to get out of London and go to Portugal. But I think for me, it's something that I need to do as well. I don't want to constantly work remotely, but I want the options to be able to do it. And I'm always out. I love the ocean. I think that's why I come here, because I love going into the ocean. And Dimitri, you'll have to look at my my Facebook page yesterday. I landed yesterday, and the first thing I do is I go to the ocean. I know this is a bit of an abstract talk, but I go to the ocean in the Algarve here, and I sat on this little sand dune. And I was watching the waves come in, because the waves were really big. And I'm sitting there on my phone, and I'm just about to take a video. I started recording because I got it, and it's on my Facebook page. And a wave came in and took me out. And it took my bag, my glasses, my socks. I lost my socks. That's the only thing I did. So working remotely is fun, but you get sand and everything, and sometimes you can lose your socks in the ocean. So just to pay heed to that, it's not always as glamorous as it looks.
I totally get you. Yeah, I totally get you. I mean, I went to Lisbon actually last March, and it was awesome. I love Portugal, really. The people, the food, going outside and everything. But it's exactly what you said, actually, and we should focus on that. To work from home, especially in London, that people are used to share rooms, they share flats, and they only have one room or maybe even the living room to have meetings and do their work. So it's very important to follow a specific procedure. For example, if it's possible to not work at your bedroom, not work where you sleep, or change clothes in the morning, or have a shower, like all of these like basic steps really help during the day. And especially if you go outside during the day. I know maybe the weather in London doesn't allow that in the mornings, but if you just have a 5-10 minutes walk, I do that sometimes to clear my head, get some air, and then start my work day. So but nothing compares to being at the ocean, taking video of the waves. You're living the life.
Where do you come from originally?
From Greece, and that's why I totally get you on that. I understand that in certain parts of the world, we've got a more, let's say, laid back life, and we enjoy being outside and going to the beach and having a swim in late October. Those are great. So I totally get what you're saying about Portugal, and
Now let's get into you and your work. How did you end up in London? And I know ethical hacker is what you go by, because, and I love the word hacker. I love some of the old. I was watching one of those old movies with Sandra Bullock in it a few days ago. It was on Netflix, and it was in the 80s, I think, or in the 90s. This movie, and she's like a computer whiz, and it's the beginning of the internet with dial-up and everything. And for me, it's this language, computer language, that really intrigues me, but my brain just doesn't kind of comprehend it. So how did you get into it? And how do you call yourself a ethical hacker today?
Well, ethical hacking is actually a profession that's been around for maybe 15 to 20 years. It started around the early 2000s, but the thing is, not many companies actually sold a lot of services back then regarding ethical hacking. It got more popular around 2013. After 2012, 2013, that's when it got more popular. and companies started buying more and more ethical hacking services and security auditing services. But you asked me how I started, so I'm gonna go with that first. It was mostly curiosity. I was around 15, 16 years old, and I was trying to decide, like most teenagers, what I'm gonna do, what I'm gonna work on. And back then, the thing is, there weren't many resources. For example, right now, if you want to be an ethical hacker, you can go online, you can even go to YouTube, you can go to other platforms, and there are lots of structured videos and programs that will actually help you to become a security auditor or an ethical hacker. But we didn't have any of those back then, around 2014, 2015. So I started watching some like YouTube videos. I started, there was actually one course, I can't remember the website right now, but there was one course that I followed and I felt more confident with my skills. And back then, there was again, one or two certifications that really help you out into getting your first gig, your first job. So back in Greece, actually, I was working as a technical support consultant. I was actually doing support for macOS devices, iPhone devices. So then I had to complete my military obligations around 2018. And then this is when I started actually sending out resumes to companies here in the UK. So I got my first job here in London. And to be honest, it wasn't actually London that I was striving for. It was pretty much everywhere. Being in Europe, one of the good things that you can literally work in like 30 or so countries. So any country that would hire me, any company anywhere that would hire me as a pen tester, because it's very difficult to break into not only the tech industry, but also ethical hacking. And yeah, I was willing to go anywhere really. And luckily, one of like my first jobs, literally my first job as an ethical hacker was here in London, and it was in Clapham Common actually. Yeah, so that's how I moved to London really, and so that's how it all started. Yeah.
It's amazing. You think about the word hacker, and you think about the people who are being nefarious with regards to using technology to break into people's Facebook, Instagram accounts. That's the big one, right? Everyone trying to take over everybody's account. Well, not everybody. People trying to take over people's accounts to eventually find banking details to commit fraud. So, is the idea that with your job is that you try to help companies make sure that hackers don't get into their systems?
Exactly. So in simple terms, actually, it's, for example, let's imagine you, Nick, you have a website and you'd like that to be audited. You'd like that to be, let's say, resilient from outside threats, from hackers. So you would actually call me and say, I've got this website, I've got this blog, and I'd like you to find security loopholes or security, as we call them, vulnerabilities in my website. So someone won't be able to, let's say, change the contents of my landing page, of my basic landing page, or get access to my credentials and delete user information and all of that sensitive stuff. So companies actually come to us and say, we've got these external websites. When I mean external, I mean publicly facing. This is one of the terms that we use. So when we're talking about external websites, we're literally talking about things that are publicly available, like Facebook, for example. And they're hoping to, let's say, have their whole infrastructure secured from hackers and outside threats. And this is actually very important because I don't know if you heard, it was around a couple of months ago, there was this teenager here in the UK, I can't remember where from, who actually got to breach Uber and a video game company called Rockstar. And I think he's arrested by now. But this is very important here for our meeting, because it's very important for teenagers and young kids to realize that there's no glamour, like it is not glamorous to unethically hack into companies and access people's pictures and information and everything. So this is the most important lesson right here, to always have a mentor from a young age, a guide, if I may, that will, let's say, put you in the right track.
Yeah, no, I like that. I really, because I've recently moved in with my fiance and her 3 boys, and the eldest one, who's 13, is like, he's very tech savvy, but I think that needing some kind of like implementing, because they're on their computers a lot, so they're gonna become aware of it and what the capabilities of it. And I think having some guidance into using these devices in a way that can benefit their lives rather than take from their lives, but they're also not very secure with their own information anymore. And I mean, I think everybody, a parent or even people, are worried about their identities being stolen. That seems to be the number one fear with all social media. And I've seen people with their Instagram accounts being hacked and then being used for Bitcoin advertising.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why is my buddy advertising Bitcoins? He's not interested in that. But they've been hacked, and there's no way for them to be able to get them back. So, how do people? I suppose this is the big thing that I want to know, is how do people start protecting their children, but also themselves, from identity theft and being hacked? And like, what are the basic, I suppose, kind of tips that you would give people along the way to say, I'm doing my best to keep my stuff secure?
Thanks for bringing that up, Nick, to be honest. And this is actually something that I wanted to mention. So there is so much actually you can do as a customer. And going back to our previous case with Uber, if you read at blogs at how this teenager managed to get into the internal computers, internal servers at Uber, you'll see that he managed to do that through weak passwords. And this is how most attacks happen. Because most people actually who are not tech savvy, they think that you must be very technical and sophisticated in order to breach major companies and access people's data. Well, this is not true, because let's say the major hacks happen through either phishing, meaning somebody will send you an email asking you to, which looks very legitimate, and they will ask you to enter your password, or they will bombard you with 2FA codes, and eventually you will give in and accept the multi-factor authentication pop-up. And this is how most companies get breached. This is how most companies get to have their data leaked online. And this is not the work of someone very sophisticated. This is the work of somebody who can guess very weak passwords. And we've seen that from a lot of our clients, actually. This is one of the, this is actually one of the steps that we follow in our assessments to determine if a company has a weak password policy. We are basically, as we call it, spraying their accounts with very weak passwords, like winter 2022 or Christmas at 2022. These are passwords that are being used right now by major companies and eventually lead to them being hacked. So coming back to your first point, what you can do as a customer is to use a strong password. And I know that sounds a bit of a cliche, but you don't necessarily have to use different passwords every time or use long passwords. Yeah, you can actually alter your current password to something else, or add more symbols, or add different numbers, or a different year maybe, so you don't have any trouble remembering that. Or also you can use a password manager. There are lots of password manager right now available for your mobile devices and your computers, and you can just use one password for your password manager, and then copy and paste any of your passwords. So my one and only tip would be to everyday people, of course, would be to use a very strong password, and secondly, to be very suspicious of literally anything they might receive, especially through email.
I think the legitimate companies do not send emails or text messages asking for people's bank details or login details or anything. So, you'll get text messages saying your parcel has been delivered. Please enter your, 10 a 10-pound charge to get it redelivered. And these are all, but you can imagine, like you say, it's the bombarding. They just keep at it and keep at it until one day you look at the email address and you think, oh, that looks legit. And it's quite scary. And I know on another note, and I know this isn't something that you probably deal with, but it's the phone calls that you get too. They can be quite aggressive sometimes, where people are saying, you haven't paid your taxes, you're going to, the HMRC are coming to your door in 20 minutes unless you pay by Bitcoin right now. But because they're so scary and aggressive, there are a lot of fraudsters out there who'll take advantage of people. And so it is about being cautious. But the one thing that I use Google, and when I'm doing update passwords, they'll do password suggestions. With all those funny symbols, and it's just those randomly generated. Are they a good way to go? Or because my problem with that is how do I remember it? And how do I keep track of all these? Because I think that's another issue. A lot of people will come up with a good password and they'll forget it. And they end up having to reset their passwords every few months, and then they start making them easier and easier and easier, and they fall prey to, like you say, phishing. So first of all, do you recommend those auto-generated passwords, and how do you keep track of them?
Great question. Well, there was always so when somebody works in the cybersecurity world, there's always a dilemma, between usability and security. So every time you want to create a new account, you have Google generate your new password, which is great, by the way. It's actually as good as having your own password manager and having your password manager generate a password for you, because this is what password managers do as well. They can generate any kind of password for you, but this password is going to be very long, very complex, with lots of symbols, and there's no way you can literally remember a 16-digit password. So it really comes back to what we said before. It's either you will use a password that you remember and modify it every time you want to create a new account, or you're going to have a computer generate a password for you, which you're going to keep on your password manager. Unless you have a photographic memory and you can remember 5 different 16-digit passwords, which I don't think lots of people can do. Personally, I use a password manager. So I do have some accounts actually that I'm using a modified password. So I just have a basic password and I modify it every time I create a new account so I can remember it. But for all of my professional accounts that have to do with my day-to-day work, I do use a password manager, and that does have very long passwords, because with the password manager, the thing is nobody can access it. That's very important actually to mention here as well. If you do use a password manager, even if you have 10, 20, 50 passwords within your password manager, those are not accessible. So even if somebody stole your computer, they would have to know your initial password that you use for your manager in order to get in, because they're encrypted locally on your computer. So even if somebody stole your computer, if they knew your Windows password or your macOS password or anything else, they wouldn't be able to get into your password manager and do all of them. So right now, using a password manager, using multi-factor authentication, especially with an app, and that's another tip as well. I know that in the last years we had two-factor authentication using an SMS. So basically, every time you wanted to log in, you receive an SMS after you type your password. Now this is not ideal. So the best option right now is actually to use an app like Google or Microsoft Authenticator with code that changes every 30 seconds. So basically this is, let's say, the safest way to go for someone who is not tech savvy and want to secure their account.
I think those are good. I think if you can, what we'll probably do is maybe after we'll get some of those apps and we'll put them in the Facebook feed. So if anybody is interested in getting those password managers and the authentication apps, we'll put them in the feed after. And Dimitri, I want to know too, when people want to go out in public and they are using unsecure Starbucks coffee Wi-Fi, how secure are their devices then? Are you making yourself vulnerable when you're going? I think that's one of the things that I want to know is like, can someone hack into me right now when I'm online? So is it possible for people to hack into your computer while you're online? And are you making yourself vulnerable by using open networks like Wi-Fi at coffee shops?
Definitely, and this is what most people are interested in hearing, is that, yes, you are actually vulnerable when you're using a Wi-Fi network that's not encrypted, that's not using a password. And again, this is actually one of the exercises that we use on our day-to-day work. Apart from phishing campaigns, it's also getting hired by a lot of coffee chain companies and a lot of multinational companies to try and break into either their corporate Wi-Fi, targeting their employees, or somebody who's just going for a coffee and logs into the Wi-Fi. Also, this is also true, again, for lots of people who are storing sensitive data on their computers, because if let's say if you want to schedule your next live meeting here on Facebook, you will have the personal details of your next visitor. And if you log into a public Wi-Fi with no encryption, then you are susceptible to attacks, and you are prone to being targeted by somebody who's also connected to that Wi-Fi. And
how do they get in? How does that happen? So you go to a coffee shop. I won't say a brand. I shouldn't do that. You go to a coffee shop. It says free Wi-Fi. You click on it. Normally it says, to redeem it, there's a pop-up. It'll come up. It'll say, click to agree our terms, and you've got free Wi-Fi, and everyone's on it. How do they how can you become vulnerable to that? How does how do they get in?
So basically, there are two main ways to get in. The first one is to create a Wi-Fi network that's identical to the one that most people are using. For example, let's say you go to your local coffee place and they're using a Wi-Fi called Nick's Wi-Fi. Yeah. So basically, what an attacker does is they create an identical network that's called Nick's Wi-Fi, and then they might actually bombard you with a lot of attacks that will get your computer, we call it de-authenticated, which means having your computer disconnect from the legitimate network, and then while it will automatically try to find it again, it will connect to the attacker's public Wi-Fi, public hotspot, or their, let's say, legitimate Wi-Fi network. That is one way, creating Wi-Fi networks that are identical to the ones that you're using, the legitimate ones. And the other way is through, we call them person-in-the-middle attacks. So basically, this is when an attacker manages to intercept traffic on the network and get access to your computer's communication. But I would say that the first option, like we call them actually, they have actually a term that we call them in our reports. But let's say this, I've forgotten the term right now, but these, let's say, hotspots, like these fake Wi-Fi networks, they are the first way for somebody, for a hacker actually, to get into your.
That's scary. It's
Yes,
yeah.
In order to, let's say, mitigate that, when you go to a public Wi-Fi, to a coffee place and you're using the public Wi-Fi, the best option to use is to use a VPN, a virtual private network. There are also free VPN providers who can also add a list of those, like the best ones on your Facebook page, the ones that don't use your data actually, because it's very important to know that a lot of free VPN providers use your data for advertising.
I use VPN Express. Is that okay?
I'm not sure really. There is a website, we can add this on Facebook. That you can
Express VPN. Yeah, that's what I use.
Yeah, that's something actually I need to look into. It's not actually one I was using, but there is also, this is very important, there's also a website that you can go into. It's called privacytools.io, and this website actually lists all the tools like password managers and VPN providers that are privacy friendly, and they're not using your data for advertising. So we will add that on the list later on.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I hope I'm not interrupting some of the tips that you're going to give, but it's really interesting that you know that these companies are using our information. So my information, and everyone says that digital information is the new oil, right? It's the new, people's data is the new currency of companies, and that's why social media companies are so valuable, because they have your data, they can sell your data to advertisers. And apart from identity, people's data it's their own, it's valuable to them. How do we protect our data?
Well, I know you've heard this again, but when something is free, you are the product. So basically, when you sign up for a free VPN provider or for something that's got a free plan, a free subscription, which is usually a paid one, then your information will be sold to third parties. It's like going into a website. If you go to a website and every time you go in, actually, there's a pop-up with the cookies. We've all seen that on website. So basically, those websites should allow you to see a list of those partners that they've got and they're willing to share your data with. And eventually, what most people do is just accept those, so they don't get annoyed every time, which totally makes sense, because most of the times you just decline everything. It won't let you browse the website, it won't let you do things. So most people just click on
accept all,
and they give away their IP address, their name, their first and last name, their personal information. And one simple trick actually that I would like to give to our viewer right now is when you sign up to a website, when you want to create a new account. I saw this the other day and I wanted to bring it up. So basically, if you want to know if somebody's selling your data, for example, let's say you sign up at a new website, you create a new account at the website of your local coffee place. They create a website and you can sign up to receive updates. So basically, every time you type your first and last name, you can also include the website's name. For example, let's say Nick Rothwell. You type Nick as your first name, and on your last name at the box, instead of Rothwell, you just also type the name of the company that you're signing up for. In our case, the name of the coffee place. So every time you receive an email from a stranger or from another company mentioning your first and last name, you will see who sold your data. Does that make sense? So every time somebody that you don't know sends you an advertisement or something else, then when they refer you as Nick coffee place Rothwell, then
Yeah.
you can make sure that they're selling your data. It's a very simple trick, actually, and
Yeah.
this is something that all people should keep in mind.
Yeah, that's a good little tip. I think it's one that I know, like my partner, like she's very cautious over cookies and she'll read all of the terms and conditions. But for guys like me, I'm like one of those just click and agree guys. I don't know if there's an episode of South Park. I don't know if you've seen it. Do you watch South Park at all?
I've got some episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You would know the one I was talking about. It's one where one of the characters signs up, just clicks I agree, and doesn't read the terms and conditions of Apple. And he basically sells away some of the rights to his body, which is quite it was quite gross. It was quite gross. But I think that's the thing is we're not diligent enough. I think that, well, I'll say I'm not diligent enough. And I have some kind of, I've always had the idea too, and I don't know if this is true, but the difference between say Apple products and Android products. Are there more secure products that you can get? Is there different hardware, that you can invest in that is more secure or, not as prone for hacking?
This is actually a good question because technically iPhones are considered to be the most secure devices right now available for the public. Yeah, I think it was a decade ago that we used to have Blackberries, and I remember seeing this picture online that Barack Obama back in the day used to have a BlackBerry for his personal phone. So everybody, confirmed that, okay, this is the most secure phone we can have. But that was 10 years ago. Today, I would say that iPhone devices are the ones that are generally more secure, and they're the ones that are less prone to have vulnerabilities. Of course, all devices have vulnerabilities and security loopholes. And if somebody wants to target you specifically, they will find another way to do it. If they can't get in through your phone, they will send you email. So if you're being specifically targeted, then there's no way around it. But if you want to be generally speaking, if we look at an example, it was, I think, a couple of years ago that there was a known terrorist, I think, in the US, and the FBI contacted Apple to ask them to get into the terrorist phone, and they declined. So Apple declined. This is an example that shows to the public, to their customers, that we take your security seriously. As for Android, you need to be a bit tech savvy in order to fully secure yourself against attacks. And as I said, there are lots of attacks that can happen through both devices. For example, with WhatsApp, again, it was a major story, actually, again, a few years ago with Jeff Bezos, actually, that got hacked because there was this zero-day attack. So basically, what we call that, we refer to as zero-day attacks, we refer to as the attacks that nobody knows yet about, and there's no mitigation, and there's nothing out there that we heard of that before. So this is called the zero-day attack. And
a zero-day attack? Zero day? Okay.
So basically what they did with Jeff Bezos is that I believe they sent him a link through his WhatsApp, meaning the mobile application WhatsApp, the communication application. And as soon as he clicked on it, he downloaded something on his phone, which then gave access to the attackers. So basically, there's, I know this sounds a bit terrifying or scary, there is no way to prevent yourself from being a victim to the zero-day attacks unless you're very suspicious about anything you receive. So the main point here is that if Jeff Bezos didn't click on that link through his WhatsApp, then he wouldn't be hacked. Well, that's another story actually, because I think they first hacked one of his contacts and used one of his contacts who he trusted to send the
Wow.
link.
Is that another thing too? I know a lot of people, like when someone like Facebook came around and they bought Instagram and they bought WhatsApp, immediately I was like, well, like Facebook are just on a data grab. If they can grab all my data, my photos and my messages from Facebook, now they can do it from WhatsApp. And I know like they do this huge, like if you look at the advert that they did at Piccadilly, I don't know if you saw it, but WhatsApp did a huge advert, Piccadilly Circus, using the 3D screens, really impressive looking ad, but they're selling encrypted end-to-end security. And I'm like, I'm still kind of like, I wish like everything's on WhatsApp now. Like all messages are going on WhatsApp. There's now business accounts on WhatsApp. How, like they say it's encrypted, but they've got every message anybody ever sends and access to that. So it's quite scary, really, when you think that they do have access to this. And I know they say it's private, but do you trust WhatsApp?
Absolutely not. No, I don't trust anything that's closed source. And what we mean by that is applications that are developed in-house by a company compared to open source tools and applications that are available online for anyone to see and analyze the code, view the code, the source code. WhatsApp is closed source, as well as Telegram, which is actually publicly known as to be the most secure at now and one of the most popular communication channels after WhatsApp. But all these apps, WhatsApp, Telegram,
What about Signal? What about Signal?
I was getting there, as I was trying to get there. Signal is one of the applications that's open source. It's one of the applications that's mentioned on our privacy tools page that we mentioned before. And it's right now one of the open source, more secure communication applications that will respect your privacy. Again, anything that's closed source, I know it's more convenient. I like the UI of WhatsApp. It's fast. Yes, there is great usability. But again, we'll come back to our initial question about security versus usability. Yeah. And even if they say it's encrypted, all of it is encrypted, you can't really trust that. You will never know what they can see and what they can't. Yeah. Even the Messenger, Facebook Messenger, it's not encrypted by default. You can create secret messages and they are encrypted, but it's very difficult to do that. There is this option that you can use secret messages to communicate in an encrypted, with encrypted texts and disappearing texts. But that's not a function. That's not an option that Facebook advertises for Facebook Messenger.
I think the lesson is just to be safe and be conscious of what you're sending to people. Dimitri, like, as an ethical hacker, do you have to stay one step ahead of hackers? So are you better than a hacker, I suppose is what I'm trying to say. And that's really what I want to know. How do you stay one step ahead of these people who are using hacking in nefarious ways?
It's a constant struggle, Nick. I spent around 2 or 3 hours every day on LinkedIn and Twitter. I'm trying actually to limit my social media exposure, my daily social media exposure, because to try and get the useful information out of social media networks is very difficult because you get bombarded with ads, with trolls, all kinds of things. So I'm spending around 2 to 3 hours every day on LinkedIn and Twitter and other blogs actually to try and get information on the latest attacks, on latest research, on latest tools, and most importantly, on latest vulnerabilities. Because even if there's no official fix for something, for example, let's say there's a new vulnerability that came out yesterday for Windows, And by the time Microsoft actually releases a fix, that might take days or even weeks. Whereas if you're tech savvy, there might be other alternative routes and options in order to protect yourself.
Yeah.
So basically, social media is my to-go source in order to get ahead and try to stay protected. But for most people out there, again, password managers, very strong passwords, and be very conscious about what you receive from anyone, really. If there's somebody you fully trust, you never know if their devices are hacked and what they're sending over. So
I think those are great tips, Dimitri. This has been the fastest 45 minutes that I've had. This has just flown by. I feel like I could talk to you for another 45 minutes in a blink of an eye. How can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about your services?
definitely, yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I've got a very simple username. Just go to linkedin.com/in/Pallis, which is my last name. Or on Facebook, you can find me on Facebook. Yeah.
Okay.
Or through email, yeah.
We'll put with those links with the password manager and everything. We'll put those links. Put your links. Send them to me. I'll put them in the Facebook page. And let's, as things go on, I think I'd like to try to get you on regularly, really, just to kind of give people an update with stuff, because this is such it's really important. I think that we operate in a lot of fear today, and I think the idea is to use these without fear and use them responsibly and safely. And I'd like to kind of keep plugging you, picking your brain on things. So let's get you on as regularly as we can, Dimitri. You're a really interesting guy, and I want to get to know you more. So I really super appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
Definitely, same here, and I'll be glad to come here often and share the latest tricks and tools in keeping everyone safe.
Let's do that. And actually, I'm going to be in Elephant and Castle next week, so I'm gonna look you up for coffee.
Definitely, yeah. Let's do it.
All right, buddy. Thank you
All right.
for joining me, Dimitri, and thanks everybody for joining us today. Don't forget to join me on Thursday for a Tough Through Tender gathering, and then next Tuesday for another Facebook Live. I've got a great guest coming up next week too. So thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye.